Episode 2, Death Lends a Hand, first aired October 6th, 1971. The first thing to mention here is that even though this episode aired on television after Murder by the Book, it was filmed first and originally intended to be the first episode, until by mutual agreement of the higher-ups that Murder by the Book was a stronger episode and should be the debut episode. So Death Lends a Hand was both written and produced by the creators of Columbo, Richard Levinson and William Link. They wrote only 2 Columbo episodes, Prescription Murder, which we've already talked about, and Death Lends a Hand, although they get story by credit on numerous other Columbo episodes. And Death Lends a Hand was directed by Bernard Kowalski, who directed 3 future episodes of Columbo, as well as over 70 other TV show episodes such as The Rebel, Jake and the Fat Man, and Beretta. So the episode begins without music, much like Murder by the Book. We hear only gunshots in an indoor shooting range, and we see a man double-wielding a couple of revolvers. My immediate observation is the lack of recoil when these revolvers are shot. His hands and wrists are completely still. If you've ever fired a gun, you know how unrealistic this is. But we see it all the time in both TV and movies. It's like the directors never instruct their actors to fake the recoil. I heard 12 shots from this scene, so it seems we have a couple of 6-shooters of some kind.
This one is as crooked as a dog's hind leg. Fire it in the vise this afternoon.
I'm not exactly sure what that means. Are these like prototypes? I noticed that the man shooting these guns, as well as the 2 observers, have no ear protection. Their ears would be ringing after 1 shot, but shooting 12 bullets in an indoor range, there would likely be some permanent damage to their hearing after this activity. So, the man practicing his aim is named Brimmer. Well, that's his last name. We'd never get to learn what his first name is. And he's played by Robert Culp. Like Jack Cassidy, Robert Culp is another fan favorite and returning actor playing the villain in 2 more future episodes of Columbo. He will also have a small part in a 90s Columbo episode, but that's not what we want to talk about right now. And we certainly don't want to talk about the guest appearance he had in a Mrs. Columbo episode. We instead want to talk about what Robert Culp is known for. Some significant mentions are that he acted in every episode of Track Down, every episode of The Greatest American Hero, as well as every episode of I Spy, where he co-stars with Bill Cosby. Culp even wrote 7 of the I Spy episodes. Robert Culp and Bill Cosby were good buddies, which brings to mind the movie Hickey and Boggs, a film directed by Robert Culp and starring both Culp and Cosby. Robert Culp even had a guest appearance on The Cosby Show. And one final mention, if a single one of my viewers enjoys video games at all, I think you'll be very interested to know that Robert Culp was the voice actor for Dr. Wallace Breen in the oh-so-popular game Half-Life 2. Watching the next 30 seconds of the show, we quickly learn that Mr. Brimmer is a very serious, down-to-business guy. And while listening to his little helper follow him through the hall, there's a lot of talk about investigations, audits, undercovers, surveillances, courts, and cases.
I assume our guest has arrived?
Yes, sir, but Mr. Kinnicutt isn't here yet.
Well, he's not due for another 30 seconds.
Video surveillance, I would think, was extremely rare during this time in 1971. So we've got the idea that this is a top-notch business.
He's just coming in now. I want you to listen very carefully.
Alright, seems there is someone in another room waiting to eavesdrop on a conversation coming up.
My name is Arthur Kinnicutt. Mr. Brimmer's expecting me.
Oh, yes, sir. Would you go right in, please?
Brimmer's secretary is played by Barbara Baldwin. She was in a few episodes of Star Trek, the original series, Adam 12, FBI, 49 episodes of the Medical Center, but she mostly worked as a casting director for the TV series Strike Force, Matt Houston, Dynasty, and Trapper John, M.D. The man with the appointment with Mr. Brimmer is named Arthur Kinnicutt. He is played by Ray Milland. The majority of actors we meet on Columbo are exclusively TV stars. Ray Milland is a movie star. He's been in so many movies, although most of them I've never heard of, between 1928 and 1954. And then we get to the Hitchcock film Dial M for Murder. I absolutely recommend it if you enjoy classic movies. And if you don't enjoy classic movies, you could start with Dial M for Murder. Then he got his own TV show for a few years called The Ray Milland Show. Later, he was also the lead role in the TV series Markham. But the movie that I first saw Ray Milland in was when I was a kid. I saw Escape to Witch Mountain. And that movie actually has several recognizable Columbo visitors in it.
Would you care for something to drink?
Oh, some coffee, black.
Thank you, Henry.
For some reason, I never even noticed Henry and his existence until I started working on this video. I'm somehow so distracted by the other two actors on screen that I just never noticed Henry, the coffee man. They gave him a name in the show and everything, but I cannot find anything about the actor and what his real name is. Oftentimes I can find information on uncredited actors, but poor Henry, I don't know who he is. Mr. Brimmer begins to talk about Mr. Kinnicutt's wife and that they have had her on extensive and intense surveillance. We learn from this that Mr. Kinnicutt was very suspicious of his wife having an affair because she is a much younger woman than him. And she must have been acting a little funny because we learn that they've actually been married for 10 years. And that we know of, this is the first time that he's had her investigated.
You have nothing to worry about. It's clean bill of health.
You sure?
Mr. Brimmer assures him that she's been behaving. When Mr. Kinnicutt leaves, Brimmer walks into the back room and we see who has been listening in. Kinnicutt's wife, Lenore. Now, Brimmer makes it clear to the audience that she was indeed having an affair and that he falsified the files.
You were having an affair. The man's name was Archer.
Over, Mr. Brimmer.
That statue back there is a copy of the Hercules the Archer statue.
Why didn't you tell my husband the truth?
Oddly enough, Mrs. Kinnicutt, I am a moralist.
Brimmer explains that thousands of broken marriages come across his desk for multiple different reasons. In her case, she and her husband have been married for 10 years, and they've had one brief indiscretion. So he figured he would do the moral thing and bend the truth in hopes of saving their marriage.
I'm so grateful.
How grateful.
Uh-oh, his moralism is showing. We learn that Mr. Kinnicutt owns 3 newspapers and has a lot of inside knowledge and is powerful in business.
A detective agency runs on information. That's our raw material.
He lets her know he can't do this kind of work alone. He needs to be able to gather information from multiple sources because it's his only stock and trade.
Why don't you think about it and then we'll talk again?
And now the scene changes to Brimmer's late evening drive home to some lovely music composed by Gil Mellé. He will be our composer for 3 more future Columbo episodes. He was quite a significant composer, getting his first real break when he composed the music for some Night Gallery episodes. Brimmer's awesome car is a 1969 Cadillac Fleetwood Eldorado. So Brimmer casually turns on the light and walks into his home like any normal human being would do. And then...
Your terrace door was unlocked, so I trespassed.
Well, it looks like Lenore Kinnicutt let herself into Brimmer's house and helped herself to his bar like any abnormal human being would do. And remember, Brimmer turned on the light when he came home, so she was sitting in his house in the dark. I think this is our first clue that Lenore isn't too bright.
Why are you here?
Well, why else? To discuss your, what shall we call it? Your proposition.
Brimmer asks her if she has come to a decision.
I've been walking on the beach for hours, thinking.
Then she starts getting snippy and arrogant and being a smart aleck with him. You can tell Mr. Brimmer's anger level is rising as she babbles on while not saying anything.
Mrs. Kinnicutt.
The answer is no. No deal. Is that plain enough for you?
Well, yes, that's really all you needed to say was no. And you certainly could have done so over the phone or at his office. You should have done that. So, before things get out of hand here, Lenore Kinnicutt is played by Pat Crowley. She was the leading actress in Please Don't Eat the Daisies TV series, as well as Joe Forrester, Generations, and Port Charles TV series. So Mr. Brimmer, annoyed, lets her know that he's going to have to call her husband in the morning. Lenore threatens that she is going to tell her husband all about the affair herself, despite any repercussions that might follow. Lenore continues to smart mouth and disrespect Brimmer, acting as though she's invincible and almighty. Brimmer is brimming with fury. Before she walks out the door, she thought of another brilliant thing that she needs to say, along with all the other brilliant things she's been spouting out tonight.
Oh, and one other thing. I'm also going to tell him about the way you run your business.
Brimmer asks her to reconsider because her husband has some very powerful friends.
That's right.
And here is one of my favorite moments in Columbo, like of all time.
Now, if you'll please excuse me.
Robert Culp's door kicking. He should have gotten an Emmy Award for that. If only Lenore was actually thinking while she was wandering around on the beach for all those hours, but she wasn't, so...
Go!
Quite a dramatic scene here. It is almost comparable to the killing of Miss Lysanka in Murder by the Book, with a silent strike and not really seeing anything happen. Although this time we clearly do see that her head is about to hit the glass table and then glass is flying all over through the air, which it's really cool cinematography, the slow motion glass falling. Brimmer leans down to check her pulse, and realizing he just killed her, we see traces of panic and fear on his face. Suddenly there are scenes superimposed on Brimmer's glasses. It's kind of giving off the idea of racing thoughts of what he's got to do now to avoid getting caught. And I personally think this montage idea is awesome. I liked it the first time I saw it, and I still like it many years later. It gets a bit of criticism from people though, and I've read that this scene even gets edited out on TV versions. Then we zoom into his left lens of Brimmer removing her jewelry and leaving his house. He's now driving in the night to some what I would describe as nervous music. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Did you see that car? That is not Brimmer's car. And that is not Brimmer. That's Leslie. You know, Leslie from Ransom for a Dead Man. Lee Grant. I wonder why they threw that old clip in there. So Brimmer pulls in and parks in some industrial looking area. He opens the trunk, wipes down Lenore's purse, and flings her out of the trunk, leaving behind footprints and tire tracks. Scene change to a great little tune that we will hear multiple times in the future when Columbo's around. This intro to the character of Columbo is 10 times better than the Columbo intro in Murder by the Book. This scene really gives you a sense that this really was meant to be the first episode, because we learn many things in a very short amount of time. We learn that Columbo smokes a cigar and that he drives an old car. Specifically, it's a 1960 Peugeot 403 Cabriolet. And now that he's been pulled over by a policeman, we learn that he's polite.
What's the trouble, officer?
May I see your license and registration?
And we learn that something is usually wrong with his car.
Turn signal, right? I'll get those things fixed as soon as I can.
You'll get them fixed now.
I would, but I'm on my way to a 187 PC.
187 PC is the code for murder. And then we also learn that Columbo is not immediately recognized as a cop,
Say, are you a cop?
and that he can't find his wallet right away.
Lieutenant, Columbo.
He doesn't keep a sharp eye on his expirations,
This license expires next week.
Oh.
which remember this for later in the episode. I just think this is a nice, short, comical scene to help get the character of Columbo established. The cop that pulled Columbo over is played by Bill Hickman. He was on TV a lot, but the majority of his roles were all uncredited, like this episode. Although he was credited for his roles in Bullet and The French Connection. But Bill was mostly known for being a stuntman. So the policeman on the bike escorts Columbo to where he needs to go, which is the location of where Lenore Kinnicutt was found.
There were 2 blows,
Yeah, send them on.
laceration on the cheek and major contusion at the base of the skull.
The medical examiner here is played by Don Kiefer. We will see him again in an upcoming Columbo episode, and you'll find him in the film Death of a Salesman, almost every episode of the Angel TV series. He plays 10 different roles in Gunsmoke, and he's in 3 Twilight Zone episodes, one of them being the famous It's a Good Life. Before retiring, his final acting role was the courthouse beggar in the 1997 film Liar Liar.
Lieutenant, you got that?
I'll know more about this after the autopsy, plus the approximate
yeah.
time of death.
Got a match?
The man checking on Columbo to see if he's listening is the captain of detectives, played by Lynn Wayland. This guy's been on the TV a lot between 1954 and 1990. Like many of our actors, he's had numerous one-time TV show appearances. But he's also been in every episode of both A Time to Live and From These Roots. And was in over 70 episodes of Love is a Mini Splendor Thing.
No tire tracks we can use.
Gotta imagine.
Did you hear that? No tire tracks they can use. Well, why is that? Doesn't look like it rained. Maybe they drove all over it.
You gotta imagine.
No, sorry.
I like the voiceover on this guy because he barely moves his lips, but the voice is so enthusiastic. Reminds me of a spaghetti western. And I like his old twin lens camera there. I just think old cameras are so neat. Now that they've examined and collected up Lenore, she needs to be identified. What a horrific day that would be. Ray Milland's acting is quite genuine with the pain and sadness he expresses on his face throughout the scene. Mr. Kinnicutt lays down his alibi to Columbo so he can cross him off the list and move on.
Was there ever another man in her life?
You're speaking of an affair?
Well, I'm afraid we're gonna have to consider it.
Lenore was faithful to me in every way. She had a clean bill of health.
Wonder where he got that little phrase. I noticed the lady behind them is crocheting. I'm really curious what she's making. Columbo asks what Lenore did in her spare time.
Nothing unusual. Shopping, charity work, tennis. She was also very fond of skin diving.
So I, for the longest time, thought skin diving meant skinny dipping or swimming naked. So I always kind of chuckled at this part of the conversation because of how serious they were. Then I looked up what skin diving really was, and it's more like an advanced snorkeling. They just have a mask, a snorkel, and maybe some fins, and they hold their breath and dive down into the water to take a gander at what's below. But nakedness doesn't seem to be any part of it. The name skin diving is just an odd name choice.
Oh, Lieutenant. Thanks for the coffee.
You're welcome, sir.
Oh man, the candies machine's out of order. Whoa. Just take a look at Mr. Kinnicutt's backyard here. Can you even imagine? Arthur Kinnicutt's mansion is called the Hearst Estate, or also called the Beverly House, and it was built in 1926. This is the same mansion used in the film The Bodyguard as the home of Rachel Marin. It was also used as Ralph Sampson's house in the Paul Newman movie Harper, and it was the home of movie director Jack Woltz in The Godfather. I did a little bit extra research on this house because it's shockingly shocking. And just a few months ago, it was up for auction with a starting bid at $48 million, with bid increments of no less than $100,000. If you'd like to see what it looks like, there are actually lots of pictures on the Hilton Highland website from when it was for sale. I'll leave the link in the description for any of my curious real estate viewers. And there's also a quick little video tour of this mansion on YouTube, so I'll leave that link as well. Just if you're curious what it looks like now. I can't imagine people living in it. It's so big and fancy. Well, so Kinnicutt supposes the police should be moving faster than they are, and is disappointed by the lack of progress. So he's hired some extra help.
This is Mr. Brimmer.
How do you do?
You see, I want as much coverage in this case as possible. And when Mr. Brimmer called and offered his services, I thought it was an excellent idea.
Ah, so Brimmer was the instigator with his involvement. That makes sense, I suppose. Columbo learns that Brimmer did some work for Kinnicutt in the past.
It's just that Mr. Kinnicutt is anxious for a quick resolution to the case. You can understand that.
Then Columbo suddenly starts going off about believing in astrology, signs, and palmistry. We learn very soon why he brought this up. Typically, Columbo's always very innocent about collecting very important information. And so he used this palm reading thing because he wanted to get a look at Brimmer's left hand, which we will learn why very soon.
That's the sign of a man who's destined to attain a very particular kind of distinction. That's a very good sign.
Oh, Columbo is good. He nails that intensely generic and non-specific palm reading perfectly. Then Columbo, I believe, purposefully opens the closet door, acting as though he mistook it for the exit. But why in the world would the exit doors be identical to the closet doors anyway? So Columbo finds out that Lenore just started learning to play golf. And through his innocent questioning about the clubs and where she plays, we learn she was taking lessons at Sky Lane Golf Course. Once Columbo leaves the room, Brimmer and Kinnicutt poke a little bit of fun at Columbo.
What was that all about?
Well, I think police techniques have changed a little over the years.
Columbo has a glance at Brimmer's car as he's leaving, but we don't know why, yet. Now we're at the golf course.
Oh, that was good.
So the golf guy finds Columbo looking through his schedule. Columbo asks him if he knew Lenore Kinnicutt.
Not very well.
Was she the type of woman who was on the lookout?
Then Golfman gets a little strict, saying,
We better get one thing straight. If they want to pair off, that's none of my business.
Columbo asks if he would give him some golf lessons.
What?
And they head out to the green. Columbo begins bringing up the fact that all the appointments with Mrs. Kinnicutt were the last ones of the day.
I like to finish at a reasonable hour.
I thought maybe you'd hang around to see if you could pick up an odd lesson.
Well, I didn't always go home.
Oh, who said anything about going home?
Columbo's doing a little finagling with this guy.
Don't say anything else. You don't have an attorney. Wait until you get an attorney. I know something about my business. I don't know anything about golf. See, that's your business. I know something about my business.
Then we see that Columbo hustled the golf guy when he throws an exceptional swing and gets a home run or something.
After a while, the old nose just tells you when someone's not giving you the truth.
Columbo lets him know he'll be back. Here we go with Brimmer sending these 8 guys down dead-end tracks to find the Kinnicutt killer. If you take a look at the map, it's actually quite accurate. I had a look at modern-day satellite map of this area and found there is in fact a wrecking yard industrial area at that address. See those 2 framed pictures of nothing behind Brimmer? Those are actually from the Cathedral series by famed pop artist Roy Lichtenstein. The building they depict is Rouen Cathedral in France. Columbo came by to deliver some information on the autopsy report and stuff. Columbo mentions about the strange cut on Mrs. Kinnicutt's left cheek.
Does this lighter work?
Yeah, I think so.
A lighter. Kind of a medium-sized lighter here with a small flame. Anyway, Columbo talks about what could have caused the cut on her face.
Could be a ring.
I like Brimmer's innocent, slow-to-realization response about the ring.
A ring of... You mean a finger ring, this kind of ring?
Yeah, something like that. Suppose you were going to strike somebody. And suppose it was a woman. Now, do you punch her? Well, maybe. But more than likely, you hit with your open hand. So I figured it was a backhand blow like this. You see, and if the ring was on the right hand, then the bruise would be on the right cheek.
But it was on the left cheek, so the murderer was left-handed.
So, Columbo talks it through with Brimmer and concludes that Lenore was backhand slapped from a left-handed man since the cut is on her left cheek. Columbo then states that he believes this was an unpremeditated crime because people don't usually kill with their hands unless they're angry. He even mentions that he wonders if the killer even meant to do it, that her death might have been an accident.
You know, I got a feeling that when we find our friend, it's going to turn out that he has a terrible temper.
Then Columbo cleverly has Brimmer fill out a receipt for his files he brought over. And what does Brimmer do but start writing with his left hand?
What a coincidence.
What's that?
Here, a moment ago, we were talking about left-handed people, and you're left-handed.
Now, wait a minute. Let's go back where we first see Brimmer writing. Here a moment ago, you were pretending to write on a folder, and now you're writing in a receipt book.
Isn't that weird?
Well, back to Columbo calling out Brimmer's left-handedness.
And right-handed. I'm ambidextrous. It's a character trait shared by about 10% of the world's population.
Actually, about 10% of the world's population is left-handed. Truly ambidextrous people account for about 1% of the world's population. And you can kind of tell that Robert Culp, the actor, is not comfortable with that pen in his left hand.
My sister-in-law, she wants to buy a place out at the beach. How do you like it out there?
Who told you I was living out at the beach?
I noticed your car out in front of Mr. Kinnicutt's.
And now I know why Columbo is observing Brimmer's car. He says he noticed the chrome was tarnished from the salt air.
You're a very observant man, Lieutenant.
That's not what my wife says,
Before Columbo leaves, he asks Brimmer if he's ever been to Kinnicutt's beach house.
I was just wondering because your beach house and his beach house, they're fairly close, aren't
No.
Brimmer says their houses are a couple miles apart.
they? Isn't that a coincidence? I'll tell you, this case is just full of them.
Now, a sudden nighttime scene change to the golf instructor guy. And who is sitting in his 1971 Dodge Challenger waiting for him but Columbo? Man, that would scare me to death, though, getting into what I think is my empty car, and then turning to my right to find a man sitting there. We learn right away that this guy is who Lenore is having an affair with.
Turning on the ladies is about the only thing I do well.
Well, while he's confessing to the affair, we learn golf guy's name is Ken. Ken is played by Brett Halsey. You'll find him in Return of the Fly. He's in every episode of Follow the Sun TV series, and he had a part in The Godfather Part 3. And like most of our lovely Columbo stars, he had multiple one-time appearances on many TV shows.
Sooner or later, you guys would find out about me. Maybe even think I killed her.
Columbo reassures him that he doesn't think he killed her because he doesn't wear a ring.
Well, I could have taken it off.
Not with that tan, because that would show.
And now Ken's thinking, good thing he doesn't know about my lucky killing ring that I only put on when I need to backhand some lady. Sorry, that was another dumb joke. Then Ken mentions he was pretty sure he and Lenore were being followed by some well-dressed ex-Marine type guy. Man, whoever that watchman was must have been really lousy at his job if this golf instructor snooping for ladies notices someone tailing them on multiple occasions. Just so happens there is a guy watching Columbo and Ken right now. He phones in to Brimmer with an update, and Brimmer calls up Leo, who is being attacked by a child. Leo is played by Marv Goh. We'll see him once more in a future Columbo episode. He doesn't have a big acting career at all, just a few uncredited roles here and there. Mostly he was a University of Southern California football coach. And before that, he was a star player for USC. Abrupt scene change to that indoor shooting range again, with the incredible no-kick revolver. And again, nobody is wearing ear protection. This would be outrageously loud, I'm telling ya. So Columbo's getting a tour of Brimmer's building. It's a funny scene to me because this man giving the tour is so excited and so proud of everything. Then he tries to do a fun little experiment of having Columbo walk through a threshold that should sound an alarm when metal passes through. This is when we first learn that Columbo does not carry a gun. Then this happy tour man is about to tell a little story about someone from another company coming in.
Mr. Denning?
I asked you to show the lieutenant around.
I did not suggest that you discuss our confidential matters with anyone at any time.
Yes, sir.
Poor scolded Mr. Denning is played by Eric James. He has only 5 acting credits, one of them being this episode of Columbo, and then the others are the TV series Bright Promise, The Name of the Game, Ironside, and Mission Impossible TV series.
Thank you, Henry.
Hey, there's loyal, hardworking Henry again. This time he's serving food. Columbo was invited to have lunch with Brimmer and discuss the Kinnicutt case and share any new information. Brimmer gets right down to business, talking about 2 derelicts in the area. And Columbo discusses the fact that Mrs. Kinnicutt was having an affair. An observation that I've noticed throughout the Columbo series, but Peter Falk is very good at talking while having food in his mouth and not being really gross. I know it's a weird observation, but he actually eats in several episodes. Then Columbo begins laying out the story practically word for word. Brimmer lets Columbo know that his theory would be impossible to prove. Then Brimmer offers a job to Columbo to work for his company and triple his income.
Consider my career. If I'd stayed with the force, by now probably with luck, could have been a captain of detectives with one eye on the promotion list and the other eye on my car payments.
Speaking of one eye, I'm sure the majority of my Columbo fans already know this, but I will mention it anyway in case someone has never researched information about Peter Falk. When Peter Falk was just 3 years old, he had his right eye surgically removed because of a rare cancer that developed in the retina, and it almost exclusively affects children. It is called retinoblastoma. Therefore, the rest of his life he wore an artificial eye, which was the major cause of his trademark squint. Well, anyway, Brimmer pitches a tempting offer to Columbo about working for him. But then a very important question comes to Columbo's mind.
If I came with you, well, would I still be working on the Kinnicutt case?
No, I have several other matters that are far more important than that. I'd like to put you on right away.
Brimmer's response is just another piece of suspicious information to add to the pile. Columbo confides in Mr. Denning about being offered a job.
Well, welcome to the family.
I don't know how much to ask for.
Top man can pull down about 30,000.
So, inflation calculators are kind of painful to look at, but $30,000 in 1971 is equivalent to $205,883 $87 today in 2022.
Gee, listen, does anybody else here make more than that? I mean, besides Mr. Brimmer?
Maybe Leo. He's the boy who gets the cream of the cases.
Hey, I think I know him. Crew cut, ex-Marine type?
Oh, that's Leo.
So, the guy who is almost top dog of the company can't keep a low enough profile to avoid being noticed by some golf instructor looking for chicks. Sounds like a poor judgment on Brimmer's part. Columbo is very slick asking all these questions. Now he knows the guy tailing Ken and Lenore was Leo, and he's trying to get a chance to talk to him.
I got his address and personnel. Don't mention it to Brimmer.
Boy, you can always rely on Mr. Denning to be ultra helpful for information. And now we are in a park where Columbo is pushing a boy on a swing, which is not a socially acceptable thing to do as a stranger to the boy. And here comes Mother.
Hey, what's going on?
At least she behaved a bit distraught about the situation. So Columbo introduces himself and tries to locate her husband, Leo, to talk to him.
His boss called last night and sent him on a special assignment.
And Columbo tries to see if he can get a little information from the missus about the Kinnicutt case. But it turns out Leo never discusses his work with his wife.
I mean, I'm not very much at keeping secrets. If Leo were to tell me anything, it'd be all over the laundromat.
Mrs. Leo Gentry is played by Lou Dressler. She was in the film Kingdom of Spiders and the TV series General Hospital, and many single TV show appearances throughout the 70s. There is no information that I could find on little Teddy here. Now we are at the DMV office with a lady reading an eye chart. Can't find any information on this actress either, which is odd because I'd say her part was significant and even funny.
Perfect vision.
Well, it should be. This is new prescription.
The DMV officer here is played by Ken Sansom. He was in The Long Goodbye, Airport 1975, and Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, but his main role that he performed regularly is the voice of Rabbit in Disney's Winnie the Pooh. And any spin-off or video game that Rabbit was a part of, he voiced for. Also, we will be seeing him again in a future Columbo episode. By the way, do you remember why Columbo is here at the Department of Motor Vehicles? Right. His license is about to expire. While here, though, Columbo had something occur to him.
She wasn't wearing glasses.
Of course she was.
Mr. Kinnicutt informs Columbo that Lenore got contact lenses soon after that picture was taken.
Contact lenses.
Just a matter of vanity.
Then Columbo gets a wild idea. He is going to have Lenore's body exhumed. In other words, dug up. Except it seems as though Mr. Kinnicutt has their own crypt space. Brimmer is informed of this by one of his minions surveying everything Columbo's been doing. When he learns about what's happening, he is on his way over. Oh, they got little candy machines in the garage? For some unknown reason, Brimmer's car will not start.
Have this one serviced. Tell him I want it tomorrow.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Kinnicutt explains why Columbo has exhumed Lenore's body.
Apparently, she was wearing her contact lenses when she was killed.
How's that significant?
Well, there's a chance that she might have lost one of them at the scene of the crime.
And Brimmer is very negative about the whole thing. By the way, this cemetery scene is filmed at Inglewood Park Cemetery.
We're in luck. The right contact lens is missing, and it's not in the coffin.
Well, it might have fallen out in the morgue, or in the ambulance, or in the street. She might have lost it before she was killed.
And Columbo plants very heavily the idea that the contact lens may still be at the place where she was murdered. Columbo says he's got a few hunches about where that would be. Now we are suddenly digging through the deepest shag carpet in town. I would think that Brimmer would have this big old rug cleaned out at some point anyway because of all the glass that went flying that night. Surely that huge rug was loaded with shards and specks of glass. Uh-oh, who's here? Oh, why, what a surprise. It's Columbo. I love Columbo's little conversation with himself about the ocean.
And you got the sound of the ocean all the time, huh?
Yeah.
Well, me, I love the beach. Except when the water gets cold. Then I don't like to go in. Then I like to pool.
Lieutenant, did you say you had something on your mind?
And I really like the moment when Columbo takes a good look at the shag rug.
Boy, this is a fantastic rug. My wife would love this rug.
Can you imagine the filth that would get trapped in that thing?
Bet you could lose a shoe in here for a week, you wouldn't
Wait,
find.
still got a lot of work to do. You're talking about my job offer.
The excuse Columbo gives for coming over is to let Brimmer know that he doesn't think he's going to take the job offer. Mostly because he didn't want to give up on the Kinnicutt case. I see he replaced the picture there by the door that broke when he and Lenore had their scuffle. Looks like a nice picture of nothing. Brimmer is really seeming concerned at this point, though. And then a thought occurs to him about his car. The trunk ought to be searched. So he gets out his lockpick set and breaks into the garage where his car is being serviced. He finds his car, pops the trunk, and climbs into the trunk for some reason. Very spacious in there, I guess. Oh, what did he find? A contact lens. Nice. Oh, what's going on now?
You mind telling us what you're doing? Checking the trunk of your car? What in the world were you looking for?
Papers.
Brimmer looks like a volcano ready to erupt at this point.
Am I under arrest?
I guess you could
On
say
what
so.
evidence?
Then Brimmer attempts a smooth trick to hide the lens in his empty cigarette box and toss it into the trash, but Columbo is on high alert.
Grab his arms!
And there is the lens. Brimmer looks to Mr. Kinnicutt with remorse and apologizes.
It was an accident, Arthur. It wasn't premeditated.
He asks Columbo how he figured it out.
I got it from the cut on her cheek in your ring. You never should have let me read your palm.
Columbo talks about how the diamonds on Brimmer's ring matched up with the cut on Lenore's cheek. Then Columbo hands Mr. Kinnicutt the lens.
You know, we're lucky Lenore lost this.
Columbo then says she didn't lose it. The medical examiner said both contact lenses were on the body. So Mr. Kinnicutt asks if it wasn't hers, then whose was it? Who knows, Columbo says, but that isn't what matters. It's Brimmer's actions that matter. Breaking into a garage, finding the lens and trying to get rid of it, and doing it all in front of witnesses.
What would you have done if the car had broken down? You couldn't set up this trap.
Then Columbo starts talking about how when he was a kid, he and his buddies knew how to put a car out of commission.
You take a potato, you stick it in the exhaust pipe. Doesn't cause any damage, but the car won't start. It was a terrible thing to do. But the reason I became a cop was to make up for all those jokes I played when I was a kid.
And now the episode ends with this little tune that I think would have been a real fine Columbo theme, but they only used it for a few episodes. Well, now we finished another episode review. Can you believe it? Remember, Levinson and Link were the writers for the episode, and they actually won an Emmy for it for outstanding writing. So what do I think of this episode? Well, Peter Falk is just awesome as Columbo, except for the pushing the kid on the swing part. And Robert Culp was perfect. He's so good at playing a very serious, impatient, and annoyed man who's trying to be polite. I love the contrast of Culp's characters with Columbo. It makes for great entertainment. I do have a bit of a criticism to get out of the way real quick, and then I'll rate the episode. And that is, don't you think that Columbo figured this all out way too easily? Like, almost supernaturally in the way he just starts laying out what happened bit by bit with hardly anything to go on. Sometimes that happens in some of the future episodes too, but I guess they're just moving along the story. Overall, though, this episode is very, very good. How good is very good? Well, I'd say about 5 Columbo cigars out of 5. You're probably not surprised, though, are you? Yeah, I'm a pretty forgiving Columbo fan. But I assure you, there will be episodes that I just don't think deserve all 5 cigars. Do you think you can guess which episodes aren't going to win all 5 cigars? Well, if you get the chance, maybe you could share my reviews with your friends. And maybe even with your not friends. Because everyone needs a little more Columbo this year, I think.